Welcome! You're watching Channel 9 Fairfield Public Access Television. I'm Susan Kessel, and our special guest today is Elaine Duncan, a wonderful Fairfield artist. Have you lived in Fairfield very long?
I've lived in Fairfield for over a dozen years.
A dozen years?
Yeah, I was in Des Moines for about 5 years in between.
Okay.
And then moved back.
Okay. The reason I ask is the first time I met Elaine, it was in Des Moines, and I am wearing a bracelet that she made. I don't know if you can see it. But you were at the State Fair, and in the exhibit part, demonstration part, I believe. Is that where?
I used to be set up in the cultural center where I would demonstrate making clay animals, mainly lizards.
But this is where I connected with you, and we sold your beautiful bracelets at our holiday art fair for several years.
Because I used to also have jewelry there and sell jewelry as well.
Okay. So you are multi-talented. You are doing masks and paintings, watercolors, the creatures, the jewelry. What's your art background?
I attended UC Berkeley,
Okay.
University of California at Berkeley. I got my undergraduate there, but I did a year at Chicago Art Institute, and then after I got my degree at Berkeley, I did about a year postgraduate study at Colorado State University.
So you have a lot of experience and a well-rounded study. Do you have a favorite?
Well, you know, it just sort of depends on what grabs me at the moment. I did the clay sculpture, the clay pieces, and the jewelry for about 5 or 6 years. Went to South America for a year or so, then came back, picked up the clay a little bit, but went in depth into painting, which is what I have been doing mainly, I'd say, for the past 3 or 4 years.
And we will take a look at those things, but I'm interested, what were you doing in South America?
Well, at the time I was married, and my husband was very interested in visiting Ecuador. He found the culture fascinating. I have a background in Spanish. So we decided, okay, we'll just go. So we did. We went down and we traveled all over Ecuador and Peru, living in hostels and just taking it one day at a time, and it was a wonderful, wonderful adventure.
Did this influence your art with these masks? I can't help but think that it did.
It probably did, but the way I work is not on a mental level. So I would guess that their impressions from being there are deeply lodged in me. And when I work, I pick up on a feeling level, and then whatever comes out, comes out. So I would say, looking at the masks, that yes, there is definitely that kind of primal, joyous quality that you find in the artwork down there is very similar to what I see in my masks.
And I love it when you look at the masks, and you look at the paintings, and you look at the jewelry, and we look at you. They are very beautiful and colorful and clean, crisp, just beautiful. Something that you enjoy to have around. So I always think that art, if you look at a piece of art and then you look at the artist, you can almost identify who it is. I've heard other judges at art shows say that too. So your pieces are so fun. And why don't we have our camera go ahead and look at some of these on the wall, and maybe you can describe your lizard pieces. How did you start that?
Well, that was an interesting thing. I was doing a show out of my home. I used to do 2 a year in Des Moines. And a lady who I had run into at another show wanted me to make her an iguana for her daughter, whose actual pet iguana had died. I'd never done it before, but I made this iguana, and I thought, well, why don't I just make 2? So it was fun making one, so make another. So I made the second one, and I had the iguanas sitting on the table, and just about everybody who came to that show wanted them.
They each have a personality, and the colors, the eyes, the little claws are also fun.
Well, and there are so many different kinds of lizards, and after creating that first one, then I got very interested in all the different kinds of lizards there are, and I spent, I think, about a year deeply involved in chameleons, and this is a kind of a chameleon up here. Her name is Opal. And then I also liked geckos. Geckos generally have those padded, the kind of round pads on their toes, but some of them have regular kind of fingery toes. So the leopard geckos are one kind, and there is a lizard up on the wall that is just kind of an Elaine hybrid. Eventually, the lizards evolved into just, well, we could be whatever we want to be. We don't have to follow the book.
So it looks like you did study or get to know lizards.
In fact, I had a lizard. I had a pet lizard for a while.
And that's reflected in the actual lizard itself up there. I can just tell. You can almost feel those little, what do you call those spiny things at the top?
Their ridges, the ridges along their backs. Yeah. Some of them have that and some of them don't. Yeah. And I like, the thing I liked was when I discovered that by putting 2 holes on the bottom of the lizard, it could be either hung on the wall or set on the table. And when I first discovered that and put the lizards up on the wall, it was a wonderful experience because they came alive in a way that they don't.
And you see them crawl on the wall.
Yes, you do.
Buildings and inside and outside of homes and places. So they belong on the wall too.
Yeah,
so
you have your choice.
Now, moving on to the masks. Do you have certain things inspire you with them? Children or costumes or just whatever? Animals?
Again, the masks, similar to the paintings, they just come out. I have a few slump mold forms, which are just, they're kind of like upturned bowls with their bottoms facing up. And I will slump the clay across that to make a basic form. And after that sets to a certain degree, I'll just go in there and things start being added. And it's not that I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I'm going to make a cat or I'm going to make a goat. It just kind of happens.
It just evolves from what it takes a life of its own.
It does. It just kind of, it just speaks through my hands. I guess that would be the way of describing it. And then after the clay piece is built and it's been bisque fired and then fired again either with a glaze or without, in the second case I apply acrylic paint. The coloring is again an intuitive process. I'm never quite sure what's going to happen until I'm right there with the piece and there are all the glazes or the paints around me, and it just happens. That's a lot of what I like about it.
That's great. I really like these. Now, we're going to look at a piece here on the table. Does this one have a name, and how do you give them names?
With the four-legged?
Yes.
That is Helga. And the very first piece I made like that, Helga 1, again, she just sort of happened. I was alone in the studio for a weekend. At that time, my family was working in the studio at the same time. So I was alone in the studio, and Helga 1 just sort of made herself. And after that, then I just started making these other primal, whimsical fantasy creatures. And the name just sort of came out again. I looked at her and, oh, of course, Helga.
Now, technically, are these solid or are they hollow?
They're hollow. The lizards are hollow. They have to be.
Because when you fire them,
They explode in the kiln.
Okay, I do remember that from working in clay. And this little person here, or creature, really fun.
That's from a series of what I call forest people, and she's the fruit lady.
Ah.
Yeah, I made those around the same time that I made Helga, the Helga and other series, such as Boris and Charlie and the others.
I love it. And then also your one piece on the wall, the lady.
The plaque.
The plaque.
Yeah.
And are these a newer?
Those are newer, and I was making those when I went back to painting. when I went back to painting, I was inspired by this kind of black, endless space that you can sometimes experience inside yourself, and how things manifest or create out of them, or created out of them. And what came out of that space was a lot of kind of primal goddess figures, big grandmothers, and these powerful women figures. And so this Madonna figure was at the same time a kind of a clay, expression in clay of that. And there's another whimsical one over here of the grandmother walking along with two fishes nipping at her breasts.
Ah, very fun. You have to come and look at these. And these works right now are on display at Henderson's. And they have been for about a month. And will they be here longer?
They'll be here until November.
November, great.
Yeah.
One more month.
One more month.
And then also at the Civic Center Artisan Gallery, we have a selection of your works, some prints of your paintings, and also some masks, and I think we have a lizard, 2 lizards. I hope we'll be getting some jewelry. It's fun we have so many artists in Fairfield that it's fun to get to know them, and Elaine is a wonderful artist here in town, and all the different kinds of art that's being created. I particularly love this plate over here. Do you do very many of the utilitarian type pieces?
I have done. I used to make quite a bit, but then people like the sculptures better, so I just ended up making the sculptures. The platter series I started around at the same time I was doing the wall plaques.
Okay.
And I have quite a few of them, and plan to get back to more clay work when my work schedule, my job schedule frees up a bit.
I know, it's really hard to fit in. It's hard to be an artist and make a living, for one thing. It's very difficult. So you usually have a different job, and then you have to work in what you love, which is the art, when you can. But I hope you do lots more platters, because those are great. It's kind of an in-between the fun, whimsical things and the utilitarian, so you get both. This piece here, the painting, and we might have a little bit of a glare on it, but tell me about this one.
This is a piece called Peacock. I painted this last year. After I did the series of paintings with really dark backgrounds, which I call the Void series, I moved into doing a lot of extremely colorful pieces, many of them abstract, which I had not really done much of before. And again, they happen, but a little bit differently than the clay. The painting will maybe stop at some point and not, and I know this sounds a little strange, but it sends a message: wait, don't work on me for a while. I need to just sort of sit and be here. So often with this way of working, I'll have maybe 4 or 5 pieces going at once. And some of them will go very quickly, and some of them will need to be up for several months until they are ready to move into their next stage. So they have a kind of a layering effect. This is one of those pieces. It started out with the large kind of gold central image and just stayed like that. And then over a period of several months, the different layers were built up on it. I could never have conceived of that mentally. In fact, I look at all of the work that has come out of me and wonder how it ever happened.
I know an art teacher once told me that you need to quit before you think you're done. And I think that is important so you don't overwork a piece. Have you ever instructed, taught art?
I have, yes. In Des Moines.
In Des Moines.
I went into the schools and I taught in some of the art programs they have up there, where once a year they bring guest artists in who
Yes.
set up for a day different classes they offer the children. And then I also taught in the daycare centers up there. And I did a couple of residencies, I think.
And it's fun when I have taught just a little, not a lot, but you do learn from whenever you're teaching. You see different things and the freshness of children and their strictly creative, talents. And like in your painting, it's just so fresh and not overworked. It's beautiful.
Thank you very much, Susan.
So I think we'll take a camera break and we'll move around. Elaine, you were telling me about this piece up here being a woman wrapped around a lizard?
Yes, yes. Again, this
I see it.
Do you see it?
I do. It looks like it's riding the lizard, holding on tight.
Oh, all right.
Do you see that?
Yeah, yeah. Now you can
Okay.
see the tail coming up behind if you want to see it that way.
Okay.
It's an interesting piece because it can work either abstractly or it can work in terms of image. And I find that that is a lot of how my work goes. It sort of dwells in that realm in between what is completely abstract and what is identifiable as a physical
Yes.
object.
And here we have a couple more of the plaque type pieces. This one, the three
Grandmothers.
grandmothers. Very fun. Oh, and above, the earrings on the mask.
Yes.
And these two pieces over here look a little more different than some of the others to me.
That was something I was starting to work on just before I moved completely into painting. And I did about 5 or 6 of those. Those are flowers. Flower plaques.
Now, do you participate in art fairs around, or I know you were at the Des Moines, the state fair, but did you do art fairs around Iowa?
I haven't done fairs in Iowa since 1999. I did do a couple in New Mexico and Santa Fe last year, but really don't have an attraction towards that way of
It's a lot
showing
of work.
my art.
Lot of
It's
work.
a tremendous amount of work. If you have support and work with somebody else, it's a lot easier. But as a single person, it's
It's hard on your work, it's hard on you. You don't have the guarantee that you're going to sell.
exactly.
You're lots of times out in the elements. So you do mostly gallery type things.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
And I do individual commissions as well. I've had that.
Okay. What type of individual commissions have you done?
I've had people commission me for clay works. I've had many people commission lizards. And I had a lady in Des Moines who commissioned a dragon for her garden.
Oh, was
That
that
was-
fairly large?
Yeah, it was about 18 inches to 24 inches tall. That was fun to do. And then I've had paintings commissioned where I do something called energetic portraiture.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had 3 different people, no, more than that. I'd say half a dozen different people specifically commission having their portraits done, some paintings and some drawings.
And I bet we'll see something in a minute, but I'm holding onto this plate because I just love these plates. And looking at it, you have used, there's a clay that's added to the basic shape here,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've also done the indentation or stamp.
Right. Made an impression with an
impression.
object, yeah.
And what did this? Do you remember?
It's the when you get accountant tape, sometimes the inside has a little orange core.
Okay.
And the end of the orange core has this beautiful effect when you impress it into the clay. And that's normally how I find tools for making impressions. Just going around the house and around
Yes.
life and finding things that
Yes.
are fun to do
I
that.
got into a stage of using jelly bags and jelly shoes. And I know the Art Association just had an exhibit with Jo Myers Walker.
Uh-huh.
And I took some classes with her, and she used a lot of jelly bags and shoes in the watercolor and airbrushing and different things. So I got into doing that a different way, but it just goes to show that artists will use anything that works. So
That's true.
and then the indentations here, how did you do those?
This is another tool. It could have been a comb. This was a combination of different tools. A comb, and then I have various sticks that I can use to make this, to just draw across the clay when it's still fairly moist.
And do you have a studio in your home? A place
No,
to work?
I have a studio for painting. I don't have a studio for ceramics now, and I haven't
Oh.
for about 3 years.
So these pieces are at least 3 years old?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So you do have a place to paint, though?
I do. I would have a place to do clay, but I don't have time to do both clay and painting.
Okay.
So I had to make a choice.
And I imagine, did you have a kiln too? Or did you have to go somewhere to fire?
When working here, I've had access to a kiln. Yeah.
Because lots of times when you get into some art form, if it's printmaking, you have to have a press, you have to have loads of room for paper and drawing racks, and working in art is not always that easy. It's sometimes messy.
Yeah.
The clay, very hard on your hands.
It requires space and tools and basically being settled, unless you're the kind of artist like a plein air artist who can pack up their little
Yes.
cases and go out in the country and set up and paint.
Yeah, it's nice to have a space where you can leave it, and
Yeah.
that is your space to work. So, I hope you can get back to doing these.
So we want to.
Do you have more of these at home?
I do.
Okay. So, you have the show here at Henderson's, and it will be here through October till November.
Correct.
Come see it during art walks, business hours at Henderson's Frames and Gallery. Wonderful place that they're sharing with our community. And the Civic Center Artisan Gallery will continue to have your work.
Also, Snowy River Pottery
Okay.
Gallery has my paintings and prints.
And that is located on North Main?
On North Main Street, right.
Okay. So there's all kinds of art in our community, and it's good to get out and enjoy it. Enjoy the wonderful art that we have and celebrate Fairfield. But let's take another short break and look at some paintings. Meet Boris and Charlie. Which one's Boris and which one's Charlie?
Well, Boris
Ah.
and Charlie.
Okay. Now, you know what these two remind me of? They were in the window, and sometimes they go for walks, and my husband and I were walking, and I said, and my daughter, I said, that looks like one of those things on the commercials, the bed bugs, or the hermaphrodites, or something like that. It was so funny. They have so much character. They're really fun.
Well, Boris was really influenced somewhat by the Javelina pigs in New Mexico. One
Okay,
time
I
I
can
was
see
there,
that.
and I had never seen them. I'd heard that there's a herd of them that runs through the outskirts of, well, actually Sedona. It was
Okay.
Sedona. And I saw them.
Oh.
And after I made Boris, I remembered, oh yes, those pigs. So, and they have the spikies.
Ooh. Well, the commercials I'm talking about on TV are these really fun little characters that are real fun, and they just talk about these little bedbug things, and it's just so funny. Oh, and then your piece is above us, and there might be a little bit of glare, but that gives you all the reason to come out and see these in person. These are watercolors?
These are actually acrylic.
Acrylic, treated like watercolor, somewhat.
Well, and there's a lot of layers of glazing
Okay.
that I do with them. A friend gave me a new easel, and this easel can flatten out like a tabletop, or it can flip up.
Oh.
So I flattened it out like a tabletop, and I was just playing with, having water on the
And
paper.
then you flip it up?
And adding color to it
Okay.
and spraying it and
Yes.
splashing it, and out of that, the water beasts stepped forward.
Do you use salt?
Sometimes I do.
Sometimes salt
Yeah,
will
sometimes
cause a
salt.
little area.
Texturing, yeah, uh-huh.
And sometimes I take my paintings and just hold them up and let them run. Just let them
Yes,
go.
yes.
And so
Or
artists-
tilt the board around to
Yes.
make the water run in different directions. Yeah.
Oh, these have a really fun feel and really wonderful colors. And they're just underneath plexiglass, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I hope that you have learned a lot. Elaine, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. And we look forward to seeing lots more. And I'm going to have to check on that plate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun.